Hi, and welcome to Deep Leadership. I'm your host, John Rennie. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Roger Gerard. He is an author, executive consultant, and keynote speaker. He's also a former chief learning officer. In this conversation, Roger shares 5 promises every leader must keep to create trust, prevent burnout, and build an engaged, loyal workforce. His wisdom comes from a lifetime of leadership experience, and this episode is packed with practical insights that you can apply right away. So, are you ready to dive in? Let's get started. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Roger Gerard. Roger is an author, executive consultant, and sought-after keynote speaker. He is the owner of Sloan & Gerard Consulting, a private consulting practice serving executives and boards in strategic planning, operational planning, executive coaching, and management development. He is the former chief learning officer for ThedaCare, an integrated healthcare delivery system, where he held that role for 23 years before retiring. He is the author of 3 books, Owning the Room, Lead with Purpose, and On the Men, which he co-authored with Dr. John Toussaint. I'm excited to have him on the show to learn from his deep leadership experience. So, Roger, welcome to the show.
John, thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, it's great to meet you, and I'm glad to have you on the show. And just I'm excited to talk, about leadership and some of the things that you've been writing about and thinking about over the years. Especially around engagement and in your observation. So one of the things I wanted to start off with is I was reading through some of your materials, and you mentioned something I haven't seen before, and you say that there is a commodification of professionals happening in the workplace, and you say that commodification, if I'm saying that correctly, is directly connected to burnout. And this is really interesting because I think I see the same thing happen as well. But could you explain what your observation is, and why that's kind of leading to a burnout?
Certainly. You're pronouncing the word perfectly, John. It is commodification. Um, I really came upon this as I was writing Owning the Room. Owning the Room is a book that is designed for managers at all levels who are introducing themselves to the leadership function. Managers and leaders are different things, and a lot of people move into leadership from a management role and think leadership is just macro management. It's not. In leadership, you're doing things very differently than you do things as a manager. As a manager, you're trying to keep things under control. You're scheduling, you're hiring, you're meeting certain goals and objectives. As a leader, you're trying to change things.
Hmm.
And so there's kind of a tension between the managers and the leaders in the organization. So I defined that difference. And as I wrote that material and did the research behind that book, I found that there were many people in management and leadership positions who found themselves literally stuck in
Hmm.
roles that they did not find satisfying and thought they would when they took those roles. Then I started interviewing people at the grassroots levels of organizations, healthcare, education, policing, a lot of different industries, and I started finding patterns and trends that disturbed me. These people did not feel valued. They
Hmm.
felt like because of standardized work, because of financial imperatives, because of marketing issues, because of structural issues, and because of lousy leadership,
Hmm.
they were not feeling valued by the people they were working with. You can only go so long in doing repetitive behavior, standardized work without feeling valued before you begin wondering, why am I here?
Hmm.
And that's the beginning of burnout. When people are beginning to wonder why they're there, they're losing their purpose.
It's
It's
interesting you say that because I actually, one company I work with, which actually was my last corporate job, was I saw that happening. I saw the engineers in this organization, very talented people, but sort of just been, just been assigned project after project after project, and with just
yes,
deadlines, budgets, and never really treated them with, they were amazing engineers doing difficult things that had never been done before, and yet they were treated like I don't know, like they didn't matter, like their talent didn't matter. And so they were very frustrated, and they were very apathetic, in this organization. I definitely saw that.
Think about what engineers go through to become engineers. These
Mm,
are highly trained people with very, very clear understandings of what the engineering process is and what they're supposed to be doing in the daily work of that job. And then they find themselves working for leadership, some of whom may be engineers, but some of whom are not engineers. And they have to meet the requirements of these people who really don't fully understand what they are dealing with on a day-to-day basis. Eventually, they feel like they're being treated as plug and play. I was in
mm,
one consulting engagement where I heard the CEO say to a group of people, "Look, you guys get paid, don't you? Go do it."
yeah,
Um, that's insulting.
yeah, yeah.
That's insulting. What he should have been saying is, look, you guys have some problems. Help me figure it out. Let's see if we can figure out the problems together. What are the obstacles? What are the concerns? He never got there
Mm,
because when he said just go do it, without any instruction, without any dialogue, without any concern for their welfare, they just walked away.
mm, yeah.
That's burnout. That's the beginning of burnout, and that's also the beginning of attrition. A lot of people, the best, will leave that environment and go somewhere else. And who are you left with? You're left with people who don't care.
You left with the apathetic people that are just like, I
That's
just need
right.
this job, I need this paycheck. It sucks, but I'm just going to come in here and do my job. And yeah,
I call them the cynics, apathetics, and naysayers.
yeah.
And,
Yes,
and yeah, I can do a whole day on that topic. It's a
yeah.
fun topic because when you ask, you put 500 people in a room and ask for a show of hands, how many of you have cynics, apathetics, and naysayers in your environment? Every hand in the room goes up.
Yes,
And then I ask them, how long have you had them? How many of you have had them more than a year? And every hand is still up.
yeah,
Well, now we have a leadership issue because they're not
yes.
dealing with the cynics, apathetics, and naysayers.
Right.
And
And
it's
yeah, and the other thing I noticed too is if you don't deal with a problem employee, like you said, a naysayer, an apathetic employee, if that doesn't get corrected, then the rest of the employees that maybe that are motivated and are trying to get things done say, look at this and say, well, nothing's happening to this individual, so maybe that's just, maybe that's acceptable behavior, you know.
well, it's worse because the cynics and the apathetics and the naysayers have checked out. They're
Mm.
not taking initiative. They're not taking responsibility. So those who are motivated have to do more in order to get things done.
Oh yeah,
So,
yeah.
so now they feel like they're carrying those other folks on their back and leadership's doing nothing about it.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
So that's how the interrelational dialogue and dynamics work in those situations. And leaders don't tend to see it. They
Mm.
don't see it because they're focused on the goal. They're focused on the financials. They're focused on the day-to-day need to produce immediate results to maybe satisfy their board or satisfy their CEO or whoever it happens to be. And they're not thinking about the human beings who are doing the daily work of the organization.
Mm. Do you think in some cases where you're in a senior management position, and you find yourself treating your workers like a commodity, is it because that you're under so much pressure from the people above you to make the numbers? I know, my 22 years in corporate, it was always like turn up the treadmill every year. Like we would have this massive successful year, and then the bosses would always say, well, that's great, but we need you to get 25% more revenue next year. And you're just like, well, we had some one-off events that happened this year.
Yeah.
How are we going to get another 25%? And so I could see senior leaders getting apathetic because they just kept the goals kept going up and up and up. And so there wasn't a time to just get to know people and understand their personalities. It was like, I just need more, more, more from a few I would say mules pulling the cart, just faster, faster versus actually acknowledging those workers and the work that they were doing.
That's part of it. That's definitely part of it. And it also leads to another dynamic, the dynamic of very high levels of turnover in the executive suite.
That's true. Yeah.
And once you have high levels of turnover in the executive suite, you have a very, very uh, dangerous impact on any kind of cultural continuity. You bring in new leaders and the culture begins to change in a very dramatic way. And that frustrates the living daylights out of the people in middle management and the people in the daily work of the organization. It breeds more cynicism.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, so, an engineer takes a job in an organization, or a teacher in a school system, or a nurse in a hospital, and they keep seeing this revolving chairs play out above them in the hierarchy. And after a while, they just get cynical about it. The latest and greatest initiative becomes the program of the day, and it'll change tomorrow. And so who cares? Um,
Right, right, exactly. Yeah, yeah, because you just see, the more years I was in corporate, the more I would just see new leaders come in, and we'd go out, march off in a different direction. They would be around 3 years, and we'd march in another direction, and for 3 years, and so you just sort of got used to it, and so yeah, you're like,
you
how can I
mentioned,
survive this leader?
yeah, you mentioned I was with ThedaCare for 23 years. I was with the previous uh, healthcare system in Michigan for 8 years. And prior to that, I was jumping every 3 or 4 years from different organizations and learning a ton. But my 23 years at ThedaCare taught me the value of a long-term, consistent leadership team.
Mm,
The first 10 years, we had one CEO, we had one CFO, we had one chief operating officer, and it was a very, very solid executive team doing the marketing and all of the other things that executive teams do. We had a CEO change. That's when John Toussaint came in as the CEO. He was promoted from the chief medical officer role. And John was there another almost 10 years, 8 to 10 years. And then it was turned over to a third person. And that third person, I stayed there for the first 4 years of his term as the CEO. But having that continuity for that length of time allows the organization to stabilize. And
yeah.
then you can do this thing called continuous improvement over time.
Oh, it's you just hit something that's really important. I know, I think of the book Good to Great, and if you look at the companies that have gone from, they've taken their good organization and made them world class. It's almost always been a senior management team with some longevity. They were
Oh,
like,
yeah.
this is what we're going to do. We're going to continue to do it nonstop until we have success, and they stick with it versus the companies that are jumping around and changing leadership, and they're never getting any stable growth. They're always just moving around and getting lost. And whereas the companies that are more stable, they're actually making those long-term gains for
The
sure.
stability also does something else, John. It offers the ability for people to create relationships.
Mm,
One of my jobs as chief learning officer was to chair a group of, we called it the communications committee. We brought first line staff from many different departments together once a month. And I got to parade different executives in front of these folks. I got to parade different managers. I got the opportunity to have them talk about what they were doing in their work. And we created personal relationships. The CEO was no longer this disembodied name on a door and or at the top of an email. It was a real human being who came in and sat down and chatted with them about
yeah,
what was going on and why it was going on. And they got to ask any question they wanted to ask. And in the leadership answered the questions.
yeah.
So if you can create relationships that are stable over 5, 10, 15 years, really great things can happen.
Yeah, I definitely see that, and I definitely see that as a challenge in a lot of corporations because they're constantly looking for the magic pill. Let's bring in this executive, let's do this, and they're constantly looking for that versus having one well thought out strategy and just sort of executing it over the long term.
Yeah, I was doing a consult in one organization. After retiring from ThedaCare, I've spent the last 14 years consulting myself. And I had a client where I was doing a series of focus groups. And in one of the focus groups, I asked a very simple question. How often do you sit with your leader and your manager and talk with them about your goals and your needs and your wants? And a person looked at me in this group. She said, "I've never met my manager."
It's wild.
Well, how long have you been here? And I've been here for 10 years
Oh no.
and I've never met my manager.
Oh no.
Well, how in the devil can you have any kind of performance measurement and performance help if you don't know who your manager is and you don't have an eyeball to eyeball contact with them?
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
silly. That's more common than most people understand.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, I think you're right. I think it is. And I often call, we often point to micromanagement as being problematic, and it is. But the other side of the coin is absent management, where no
Yeah,
where the leader is never around and you never meet your boss, and in like your
yeah.
scenario, and the feeling of the employees that the people don't care, the people above me don't care because they're not around. They don't ask.
Well,
Yeah,
it's the old Tom Peters saw. Somebody asked Tom Peters many years ago, how do you do this thing called management by walking around?
yeah,
And
yeah.
you've if you've ever seen him speak, he's kind of blustery, but he said you go to the workroom, the tool room, you get a hammer and you get a nail, and you go back to your office and you nail the damn thing shut. That's how you do management by walking around. You
Yeah,
should be out there where the people are doing the daily work.
yeah, yeah.
When I was at ThedaCare, I spent a day a week, a day a week shadowing somebody. Could be a nurse, could be a guy in the stock room, could be somebody in the cafeteria, but I spent that time getting to know people and what they were doing in their daily work.
I think it's so important. Yeah,
It was
longtime listeners of this podcast will know my first episode. It was just me solo talking about Gemba, going to the
yeah.
place where the value is added, and the people
I
where the
never
people
I
are.
I never called it going to Gemba.
Yeah,
I what I said is I want to get to know you. I
yeah,
want to get to
yeah,
know what you're doing.
yeah, yep. Yeah, I use that analogy of from lean manufacturing, but the idea is go to the place where the people are adding value because that's like the most important employees in your company, the ones actually the people that are last touching the product when they go to the customer, the people that are calling the customers, the customer service, you know and the people that are on the front lines, your bank tellers, your teachers. That's where you need to be. And I think a lot of senior managers get caught up in their bubble, the management bubble, I call it, where
And
they're around people, they're all around people that tell them how great things are versus, the real
we're
people.
all, you're right, John, and we're all guilty of it. I didn't start doing that until John Toussaint called me into his office one day and said, "How come you're in your office so much?
I love it.
And how come you're not standardized going out there and finding out what's going on in the daily work?" He had to call me on it. And he was right. He was absolutely right. And from that day forward, I spent a lot of time out and about.
I love it.
ThedaCare had several hospitals and all kinds of physician clinics. So going to where the work was being done
Yeah.
was a lot of traveling all
Yeah.
over the
Yeah.
state of Wisconsin. So,
I love
but
that.
that's
I love that. Such an
that
important
was
thing. I think we
yeah,
need to get out and I typically right now I will work in the mornings, in the afternoon I'm in the shop floor and
yeah,
spending
yeah,
time with employees, and I think that's really important. I think leaders need to see and be seen. I think it
yeah,
both are just as important.
yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things you talk about is authenticity. And I was just curious, how does authenticity fit into this with respect to either the professionals that may be having these feelings of being commoditized, or leaders that are trying to prevent, their people from burning out or being apathetic. So how does authenticity fit into all this?
But let's talk about what the word means, first of all.
Okay.
It comes from two Greek words. The auth part of it means self,
Hmm.
and the centicity part of it is all about getting things done, going and doing. Okay. So basically, that has evolved in our language to really mean being genuine. You are being yourself, and you're getting things done in that self understanding. Okay. So when you're being authentic, what you see is what you get. And I'm going to be this person, whether I'm walking around, visiting the workplace, whether I'm in the executive suite, whether I'm in a focus group. I'm going to be who I am, and I'm going to trust that you are who you are. And the more I can be that authentic person, the more I'm opening the gate for people to trust me. You're not going to have a trusting relationship without authenticity. It's not going to
Hmm.
happen. You can lie about it. You can pretend to be authentic, but the minute you're caught in a lie, the game's over. The relationship's over. I did a consult in one organization, a healthcare organization, in which before and I was introduced to anybody, the CEO allowed me to come in and just wander the place and ask questions. And here's this strange guy coming into med surge or the laboratory or radiology and saying, "Hey, tell me about the core values here. Tell me about the mission. Tell me about the vision you guys have for this organization." Nobody knew what I was talking about. A couple of folks pointed to some plaques on a wall and said, "Well, I guess that's it up there." Um, what that told me is that the leadership had not been behaving in an authentic way for a long time. They weren't living the words that were on the wall. They weren't saying this means something and this is real. I
Hmm.
then spent the next year doing focus groups in that organization and creating with them a new set of mission, vision, and values and key strategic initiatives that had the fingerprints of over 700 people from the organization all over it. The senior leadership didn't go into a back room and write it. The staff wrote it, and it
Yeah.
meant something to them. Um, but that's what authenticity means to me.
Yeah.
It means let's put our own fingerprints on everything. Why are you here, and what do you want to achieve?
Yeah. And I think too, don't you think that the people get it or they see it when you're being fake or phony or or you're not
Oh
being
yes,
genuine? They don't
oh
they sense it, they smell it a mile away.
no
And
question.
they think that the leader thinks they're being clever, but the people sniff it out really quick, right?
You want to know what the best evidence of that is? Incentives.
Hmm.
We use incentives, and we believe that if we give somebody incentives, that's going to make them feel good about their work. It's going to make them be more motivated. It's going to be, and so we give people incentives, and they'll take the incentives hands down, but they'll only do what the incentive pays
Hmm.
for. And they know they're being manipulated. They know it's a lie. It's not about the relationship anymore. Once you start doing that, you've shifted from intrinsic rewards for doing the work in the right work in the right way at the right time to extrinsic rewards. And it means management no longer cares about that stuff on the wall.
Yeah, yeah. Yes, and I think in some organization I've seen where the incentives are almost in conflicting in some cases. So we have people on the same team with different incentive plans. They're
Oh, yeah.
motivated differently, so it creates internal conflict as well. So one person's chasing maybe on-time delivery, the other guy's chasing inventory reduction, which those two can somewhat clash in manufacturing where you reduce inventory, now your on-time delivery goes, so the two guys are fighting over something that they care deeply about. And we're not focused on the overall organizational mission. We're focused on a very micro, cosm of the organization.
You've just identified the root cause of what I refer to as one of the most significant poisons that affect most companies: blame and shame.
Mm.
What happens in that environment that you just described is people start blaming one another for why things aren't getting done.
Oh yeah.
And shaming one another for their failure to agree with me on my right way of getting things done. Blame and shame are poisonous. And once it's allowed and once it's not dealt with, the entire culture suffers.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's really a poisonous reality, and it happens because of exactly what you've described, these conflicting intentions, conflicting goals, without a mechanism for dialogue to bring people together and really together figure out how we're going to do this.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes so much sense. It really does. So leaders that are listening in and they may see like some signs in their organization where this might be happening, and they want to make a difference. They want to make a change. What are some things that leaders can do to, or how do we create a positive organizational culture? One that people like to come to work. They like being part of the team. They're bought in on the mission. They're treated with respect. What are some things that you've seen throughout your history that work to help kind of make that shift and get to a positive organizational culture?
You bet. There's a couple of steps here, and the last step is five promises. But before
Mm,
we get to the five promises, we have to set the context. Leaders need to learn how to listen first and listen deeply. Uh, and it's not just about the words, it's about the intentions that people bring to their daily work. Respect what they are telling you and respect their own intentions. A lot of these people, most of them are professionals. They may have done this for a long time. They may have degrees, they may have advanced degrees. And as professionals, they expect to be treated in certain ways. And if you don't treat them that way and listen to what they have to tell you, they're gonna check out. Number two, never second guess professional expertise and professional experience. I have found that anytime a senior leader second guesses what the professionals are telling them, number one, the professionals check out. And number two, the leaders end up being wrong
mm,
about what they're trying to do.
yeah.
They may have an intention to speed up the financial gains, to speed up productivity, to do something to market differently. And if the professionals are saying, "Whoa, stop, time out, hold it," listen to them. They're 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 not being resistant. They're being helpful, but a lot of times it doesn't feel helpful.
Mm,
The third thing is that leaders need to do is they need to be clear about strategy and goals. So often they say, well, we need to improve productivity, or we need to do something about quality improvement around here. So get started. Well, that's not clear communications. And what leaders have to understand is they have to translate what they intend into language and specifics that the person doing the daily work of the organization can put their hands around and really do something with. And leaders historically have not been specific enough. They think they're being strategic. Actually, they're miscommunicating in a very, very big way. So, but that leads to the five promises. If you want an engaged workforce and you make these five promises, you've just increased the likelihood that you're going to be successful in creating an engaged workforce. Promise number one, I will listen to you with respect and I'll take your input seriously. Hands down. If we disagree, I'll tell you why. Number two, I'll help you learn and grow as you practice your profession. Every professional wants to learn and grow. They want to become best in their class. Number three, I'll help you be wildly successful. How many bosses are able to go to their staff and say, I'm going to help you be wildly successful? You better tell me what that means so that I can help you, but I want to help you. Number four, I will make sure that you're compensated competitively. This is not a small deal. It's a big deal. Everybody watches compensation and they know what they're being paid and they know what their competitors are paying.
mm-hmm,
Compensation isn't about the money, it's about whether I feel valued or not.
yeah.
And so you need to make sure people are paid competitively. And by the way, that's 60% comp ratio and not 50. In the HR world, HR people want to go 50, anything better than 50. Wrong, because your data is already a year old. 60% comp ratio. Make up
Makes
the
sense.
difference. Last promise. I will have your back if and when things go wrong.
Mm.
Everybody wants to know that they got somebody behind them having their back when things go wrong. You make those 5 promises to the people who are doing the daily work. They'll work their asses off for you. But you got to keep those promises. The day you fail to keep them, the game's over.
Wow, that is a great summary of a lot of the work you do. You've just kind of given us the 5 promises. You've given us a roadmap of how to create a better workforce, a more engaged workforce. That's a powerful reminder. And all those things, I think through my history as a leader, those all apply. I can see that they just make sense and it fits with what I've seen as well. In the and I've written about the last one, which was, does a leader have your back when things go wrong? And I've written about that in my books of leaders that had my back when things went wrong, and how I would run through a wall for them afterwards
Sure.
because of that loyalty they had for me. So I became loyal to them. So that last promise is a very powerful promise, and we shouldn't minimize that. That's a very important part of that. So
Yep.
yeah.
All right.
Well, this has been fantastic. I really appreciate, Roger, you coming on the show and sharing just, all your decades of experience and sort of summarizing in a way that's really easy to understand. How can our listeners find out more about you, the books you've written, and the services you provide today?
Go to my website, rogergerard.com, and you'll find everything that we've talked about. My books, my podcasts, my articles that I have written for different journals over the last couple of years. It's all there. Even some of my photography is out there. So
Fantastic. It's a great website. Listeners, I do highly encourage you. It's going to be, the link is in the show notes right here. I highly encourage you to check it out. If you want to become a better leader, you need to be around people like Roger who have done it for a long time with a lot of success at a very high level. He's also seen a lot of companies, basically struggling. He's come in there and he's helped them, get out of that struggle and create a more unified team. So if you want to be a better leader, you want to be more effective, I really highly encourage you to connect with Roger. Go to his website, get one of his books, and you're going to be a better leader because of it. So again, go to the expert. Roger's the expert. I am just the guy that talks to him. So highly encourage you to talk to Roger and find out more. Roger, I want to thank you for coming on the show. Thanks for sharing all your wisdom, and thanks for having such a great conversation today.
thank you, John. It was fun.
I enjoyed it as well. Well, that is it for today. Thank you for listening to Deep Leadership. If you like this podcast, please subscribe and share so we can continue to build a world with better bosses. Until next time, this is John Rennie saying take care and lead well.